think. Oh, no. Uh-oh. Hey guys, sorry, oh god. My little thing here just totally came off its stand. Alright, hold on. Sorry. Hi guys. Happy Mercury retrograde. Give me a second here. Hold on. I have to undo this contraption because I am not going to try to fix this right now. I'm just going to set this here on the floor. Oh my gosh. Hi guys. All right. Well, let me go ahead and pull the chat back up here. It already seems to be kind of a hot mess. Oh my gosh. Let me also fix this frame. Okay. All right. So we are going to be diving into the astrology of the month of December, which is always our most galactic month of the year. This year being no different, although the asteroids and lunations and Mercury retrograde all aspecting these galactic points that we have activated this time every year. This year, I find very significant. So we're going to be diving all into the month of December. I'm going to link this calendar. This is an example of what my 2024 calendar is going to look like. I'm going to link this below the post over on Patreon, so you guys will have access to this. And we're going to dive in. I need to get the chat up here on my phone, which totally, I got all discombobulated. Why is it doing this? This was the problem I was having when I couldn't log in. It just disappeared. Okay, what the heck? Ugh. My phone just keeps turning to this random spinny thing. I think it's like so full that it's spazzing out, and I need to go through and deal with my pictures, but I really do not want to scroll through all the pictures of my dog. So sad. All right, I don't know. I can't get this link to open. Hopefully you guys can. I don't really know what's going on. My phone is whatever. I'll randomly come over here and check in with the chat, so I won't have it in front of me. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll just hop in to the slides. We're going to go a bunch of places, of course. Surprise, surprise. All right. All right, so here is our thumbnail. It's, of course, a Sagittarius new moon. It falls around 20 degrees of Sagittarius. It's conjunct the asteroid Psyche, which is something we'll be talking about extensively. Psyche plays a major part in not only this moon, but our Mercury retrograde cycle and the conjunction with the sun and the galactic center. Psyche is here for it all. And she's also conjunct this lunation. This moon falls right about here in alignment with, I cannot pronounce this word. I should know. It's aligned with my moon. Rasselhogs? I know that's probably so wrong. I should look up how to pronounce these things before I come here. I have no idea. I call it the third eye of Ophiuchus. It is the main star in the constellation of Ophiuchus, and it falls within his head. So this is something we're going to be talking about here significantly throughout this video. This moon is also falling during I guess they're calling it like a once in a lifetime celestial event. It actually happened tonight. So the moon is exact tomorrow around 3:32 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And tonight, I think it was around like 6:30. I know it was like 8:30 Eastern Time. this fixed star Betelgeuse in Orion, which falls almost exactly, Orion falls opposite Ophiuchus on the ecliptic. So Ophiuchus is over here in Sagittarius and Orion is over here in Gemini, and they oppose each other. This is something we talked about significantly in the last leg of my course. I'm just going to try one more time to get the chat up here because I don't like that I can't see you guys. Answer questions. It's going to be too hard to click back and forth. Like, I can get YouTube to open, but I can't. When I click the link that I emailed myself, it doesn't. Okay, there we go. Okay, there's the video. But it's still like, oh my God. Okay, so Orion falls opposite Ophiuchus in the sky. And tonight we had an eclipse of this star, Betelgeuse. It is not the brightest star in Orion. That's Rigel. Rigel is like a massive, gigantic star. But it is one of the most noticeable because it is this like orangey color. So it really stands out in the constellation. It's really big. This is a constellation that everybody can see here in the northern hemisphere right now, regardless of light pollution. Like even in the densest city, like here in LA, you can see Orion. Everybody can see Orion. Where I live, I was not able to see Orion at the time of this event because it was still below the horizon for me. But if you lived below me in regards to latitude, so like I think it ran through like Mexico and Florida, the line where this was visible, the line of totality. An asteroid tonight, asteroid Leona, Latin for female lion, passed in front of this star here for about 15 seconds and obscured it from our view. It occulted it. That's what astronomers refer to as an occultation, when something passes in front of a star or a planet and it obstructs its light from us. It hides it. It occults it. And this star here, Betelgeuse, was occulted here tonight. This falls in opposition to where this moon is falling, and the mythology around both of these are intertwined. They're intertwined with ritualistic current events, and they're intertwined with each other. So this is something we're going to be talking about here significantly. Yeah, the moon actually falls in exact opposition to Orion's belt, but within orb to Betelgeuse, which is in exact opposition to the galactic center, which is just a key player in much of what we're going to be talking about here, particularly our Mercury retrograde cycle and all of the upcoming alignments with Mars and the Sun and Psyche, all of which will be transiting the galactic center throughout the month. Sagittarius is the sign of the tropical zodiac that houses the most galactic activity. Most of us are familiar with the galactic center, which falls at 27 degrees of Sagittarius. There's also the Great Attractor, which falls at 15 degrees of Sagittarius, give or take. I can't really find an exact degree for that, and none of my softwares have it, but that's where people say they like round up 15 degrees. That's the center of our supercluster, which is a cluster of 100,000 galaxies. These are really massive galactic points. Most of us are familiar with that, but I was reading just the other day, and I honestly don't remember which book. Maybe it was this Alex Miller's Black Hole book. I can't remember. I honestly don't remember. But I was reading just the other day that maybe it was Philip Sedgwick's newsletter. I don't know. I can't remember. But I was reading just the other day that Sagittarius, in addition to the galactic center, the center of our galaxy, the center of 100 billion stars all rotating around this core black hole. We also have the Great Attractor, the center of 100,000 galaxies. And then apparently we just have, it's just riddled with black holes, more so than any other sign. So this area of the sky, which is super profound, and if you've followed my work for a while, like, we've talked about it. We have talked about it from a plethora of different fucking angles. Ancient mythology to this like esoteric symbolism, to my strange, weird downloads in regards to the Axis Mundi and whatnot, right? We have covered this area of the sky extensively. But I find this interesting and not at all surprising. Sagittarius is that sign where we reach out into the beyond. It's the sign of adventure. It's the sign of philosophical exploration. It's the sign of higher expansive thought. It's the sign of dogmatic religions, but also our own spiritual quest to know thyself. And this is the pinnacle of the evolution of the self. And this is very much where we meet our higher self. And this new moon, while yes, Mercury is stationing retrograde, I'm going to talk about how this Mercury retrograde is not all that bad. Like, we're going to go all the way through the Mercury retrograde cycle, and we're going to discuss every single aspect Mercury makes during its retrograde cycle. And most of them are very harmonious, fate-driven, trines and sextiles. It's a lot of beneficial aspects, a lot of harmony, a lot of ease. There is a square to Neptune, the same square that we're experiencing at the time of this moon. This moon falls in a square to Neptune. And yes, that can bring this sort of like nebulous confusion, this essence of unknowability. It can bring confusion, yes. But we are being guided by the North Node. We are being guided by this essence of fate, of destiny. And just because we can't fully put our finger on what exactly is going on and where exactly we're headed doesn't mean we're not headed in the right fucking direction. So, like, we could very well be on the right course and walking in exactly the direction we need to be walking in, but the road before us is foggy. It's hard to see, it's hard to navigate. And so what this moon and all of these transits we're going to discuss here is asking of us and really wanting us to hone at this time is our spiritual sight, is our ability to see despite the fucking fog. And the square to Neptune is that trigger. It is that test. It is that disconnect. It is that tension that is going to force us into needed action. And that needed action is the honing of our spiritual sight. All right, so this is something we're going to be expanding on. You guys know I always ramble a little bit here in the beginning, so I can rewatch this and not have to watch the whole thing and kind of know where I was going with this when I can come and revisit it 6 months from now at the Sag full moon, because this is a new moon. Something is being seeded right now, something that is going to be developing over the next 6 months. So like this moon is entangled with the Mercury retrograde cycle. This Mercury retrograde cycle transits over the galactic center 3 times. Cosmic messages are trying to break through, but we aren't fully going to understand these for 6 months. Like, yes, once Mercury stations direct and finishes its shadow period, things will become clear. Some of these messages will come through quite clearly. But really what this is all about, we aren't going to fully grasp until Gemini season, when we have our Sagittarius full moon. Okay? Let me see. I'm just going to read this and see if there's anything I want to touch on, and then we're just going to dive in, because we're going to get all these places. We are going to get all these places. So tonight is the occultation of Betelgeuse. It already happened. But it is happening in opposition to this moon, which is tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. So these two events are intertwined. This occultation is happening because of an asteroid going in front of this light, in front of this star, signaling a death and a rebirth. Orion is known as the god on the equator, something we're going to talk about here in a little bit. Most notably associated with Osiris in the ancient Egyptian pantheon. And he is the god of death and rebirth, the god of resurrection from the underworld. That's already his archetype. Now, one of the main stars, the star here in the shoulder that holds the club or the sword, depending on who is being depicted here. In the Greek myth, he's holding a club. We'll get there when we talk about his mythology a little bit later. But this is a dark rebirth. This is a rebirth from the unconscious. This very masculine constellation, regardless of what pantheon's mythology we want to pull from, this very masculine constellation's light, its consciousness, is being reborn from a feminine archetype. Not only is it an asteroid, which is already considered to be like these unconscious forces, there's no light emitted from them. They're pretty much rocks in space. They're very dense, like the darker parts of our psyche. But this asteroid is named for a female lion, so it is innately feminine in its origin. I think it's interesting that Psyche, the asteroid Psyche, also is playing a key part here. It tells us that, like, we will be able to hone this spiritual sight if we can get right with the depths of ourselves, the depths of our psyche. We are being reborn because of these forces at this time. All right, so Mercury transits over the galactic center 3 times. We'll discuss all the dates here. This is bringing through these cosmic messages. They're very much trying to break through. The quincunx to Uranus brings a sort of almost, it's also retrograde, almost like inability to break through, and the need for there to be some sort of like adjustment in order, or compromise, in order to come into alignment for those messages to break through to our higher mind, right? But they very much can at this time. This Mercury retrograde really does want to work with us, like so much so. If you're seeing any posts from astrologers like not saying that this is actually really good opportunity, just scroll past those, because I don't think they even looked at the aspects. Okay. All right, we'll come back to this. All right, so grab your chart. You're going to want to look and see where a couple of things are. Those of you who are new, read the post over on Patreon. There's a bunch of places linked as to where you can get your chart, where the best places are to run your chart. All right. Why is it doing this? Okay. So you want to grab your chart and you want to look and see, where does Sagittarius fall in your chart. This is a new moon. Both the sun and moon are conjunct in Sagittarius, and they are starting a new story here, a new chapter. Whatever area this falls in, Whatever house this falls in is the area of your life where you can really start something new. Something new can be initiated. A new chapter is ready to be written. If you are one to manifest or set intentions, this would be the area of your life that you would want to be focusing on. For me, it is my 4th house. So Sag falls in my 4th house, which is my house of home, the subconscious, intuition. Has a lot to do with the mother who I have to make a phone call to tomorrow and literally list all these things out of this scan book to her. Oh, it's going to be a nightmare. This moon is also opposite the asteroid Carol, which is her name. And it falls conjunct my moon and my Uranus and a whole bunch of stuff. But anyway, I have to call my mom tomorrow. That should be fun. But it falls to the 4th house. This is our ancestry, our lineage, our generational karma, our generational trauma, and our innate psychic senses. So this is the area of my life that will be of focus. This is the area where I can exert my will upon the situation in order to spark things into being, in order to set intentions, in order to manifest anything. That would be the area where I would have the most luck. You guys, you've probably heard me say there's a time and place. You know, I know a lot of people, they try to take every moon as an opportunity to like manifest love or money or abundance or security or all of these different things, which are all great and stuff, but there's a time and a place. And I believe that astrology is a tool to help you get in equilibrium, to get in a rhythm with the nature, with the divine itself. And if you're in that equilibrium, if you're doing things at the time they're meant to be done, then everything just flows. So there's a time and a place to focus on your career and your ambition, right? Whoa, 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 whoa. There's a time and a place to focus on money or relationships, right? For me, right now, the focus is the 4th house. For you, it is somewhere. You're going to want to look and see, where does Sagittarius fall? Again, this is where you'll be experiencing this new beginning. This is where a new chapter is starting that will build over the next 6 months. Caitlin says she's a Sagittarius rising at 1 degree. She has a Virgo sun and a Virgo Mars. So Sag falls in her 1st house. She's starting a new chapter in regards to her identity, her persona, her behavior, her vitality, the self, her. This moon falls in I don't know what orb, but it falls in a square to both her sun and her Mars. So she is very strongly aspected at the time of this moon. And the planets that are aspected are her rising sign, which literally signals the self, her identity, her Mars, her driving force, her life force, her will, and her sun, which is literally her consciousness, all of which are strongly aspected. This really has a lot to do with you, you and your fate and your destiny, because the North Node is all up on this moon. I keep saying eclipse. I don't know if I've done that yet in this video, but like the last 4 videos, I just keep saying eclipse. Okay. So you want to look and see, do you have any planets near 20 degrees of Sagittarius? If you have any planets near 20 degrees, then they are very strongly aspected by the sun and the moon, which are conjunct each other at 20 degrees. You want to look and see, really, do you have any planets near 20 degrees of any of the mutable signs? If you have planets near 20 degrees of Sag, those planets, which you can look at the apprentice cheat sheet linked over on all the other posts on Patreon except for this one. I finally forgot. I did forget. I did forget to post it. But you can look over there to understand the planetary archetype. But whatever planets that would fall within 20 degrees of Sag, those planets and that house is very strongly aspected. If you have planets near 20 degrees of Sag, they're conjunct the sun and moon. If you have planets near 20 degrees of Gemini, they are in opposition to the sun and moon, in conjunction to the earth, which is always opposite the sun, and they're also aligned with Orion's belt. Orion's belt falls from like 20 to 24 degrees of Gemini. If you have planets near 20 degrees of Pisces or Virgo, then those planets are sitting in a square to this eclipse, to this moon. All of these are very strong aspects that are felt, more so than trines and sextiles, which are kind of like easy, free-flowing energies. They don't really force anything into being. But conjunction squares and oppositions manifest things into being, particularly squares. These are the triggers that we need that force us into action. Squares get a bad rap, just like freaking retrogrades get a bad rap, and neither one should. Without squares, we would never act. And nothing that is initiated at a new moon or at a conjunction would ever come to fruition, because it's the squares that force us to then make those seeds a reality. Okay? Okay, I think we're good here. All right, let's talk a little bit about Sagittarius, and then we'll go a bunch of other places. All right, so Sagittarius is one of the 4 mutable signs, these ones here being the other mutable signs. The mutable signs are the signs that sit at the end of a season and start to shift us into the next season. Okay, the cardinal signs start that season. They're initiatory, they spark things into being. But the mutable signs shift us from one into another. They're mutable, they're adaptable, they're shifting. Sagittarius is mutable fire, and this is fire that's shifting into something else. It's shifting into something etheric. It's shifting into something spiritual. It's pushing out into the great unknown, and it's changing along the way. I always say that Gemini is where the 1 of Aries becomes 2, and Sagittarius is where the 2 becomes 1 again, and we start to connect to that essence of divinity beyond polarity. But we're not quite there yet. And both of the archetypes that, the stellar archetypes that fall here, Sagittarius or Chiron, the centaur, half god, half animal, sometimes referred to as half man, half beast, but he's a demigod. He's part divine, he's part god, part animal, much like man himself. And also Ophiuchus, who is also a demigod, part god, part man, working to integrate that serpent, that other half. Okay, and then once that happens, once we push beyond that split, that war, that divide, and we can really access that higher consciousness that Sagittarius is seeking through all of its pursuits, whether it be academia or philosophy or religion or some sort of hero's journey into the great unknown. This is what Sag is questing towards, and it can find it. And we see this mirrored in the cosmos, as above, so below. Sag is seeking, Sag is questing, Sag is pushing, reaching out to what is beyond, what is more. And there is so much there that it can grab. There are all these galactic points. There is a plethora of black holes. There's the galactic center, the great attractor. It sits opposite the pole star. It's aligned with Ophiuchus, this like secret, hidden 13th sign that represents the integration of our other half and the becoming truly cosmic in the process. And this is the area of the sky that tells the story. All right, so Sagittarius is a masculine sign. It's of the masculine polarity, and therefore it is very rooted in our mind, in our intellect. In this case, it's the higher mind, okay? So Sagittarius is governed by Jupiter. Jupiter, who's retrograde right now over in Taurus, plays a key part in the Mercury retrograde cycle, which will be transiting back into Sagittarius eventually. And it will be trining Jupiter retrograde throughout it, for many times throughout it. And after it goes direct as well. Jupiter is the ruling planet of Sagittarius. So the ruling planet of Sagittarius is working harmoniously with the Mercury retrograde that starts the same time as the Sagittarius moon later in the day, though. Jupiter is the planet of expansion and growth and philosophy, the higher mind, higher learning, social expectations, ideals, opportunity, religion, faith, wisdom, law, theoretical thought, morality, spiritual or material prosperity, and long-distance travel. Jupiter shows how we grow throughout life to fulfill the potential of our birthright. Not only does Jupiter harmoniously aspect Mercury retrograde, which starts the same day as this moon, but the North Node, which also has a lot to do with how we fulfill our birthright, our fate, our destiny, sits in a trine to the moon itself. There's a lot of harmonious aspects riddled throughout the chart. I don't know, I've seen a lot of astrologers just not zero in on that. I don't know, especially in regards to this Mercury retrograde. A lot of people are like, whoa, just because it's square to Neptune. Like, people are really afraid of Neptune. Like, come on, we got to hone those psychic gifts and we'll be fine. We can navigate Neptune. All right. So Jupiter shows how we grow throughout life to fulfill the potential of our birthright, our personal path of initiation, or our hero's quest. And the sign of Sagittarius embodies this archetype. Growth in this context speaks to how we develop in response to the prevailing beliefs of society, and to what extent we either blend in with or challenge them. And there's a lot of prevailing beliefs being triggered within the collective psyche right now that is causing a split, a war, a divide. And this Sagittarius season every year. And let me just kind of go over here. This is a PDF from my course. So I'm just going to make this bigger. So Sagittarius is the 9th sign of the zodiac. The zodiac starts here at the spring equinox with the spark of life that we develop throughout the zodiac. The first 6 signs are really a focus on the inner development of the self and our inner world. Once we reach the other equinox, we start to merge with our other half, and we exit out into the outer world. Libra representing others, one-on-one relationship dynamics, all the way to the collective unconscious itself. This is where we start to develop because of the outer world, through the outer world, as triggers or mirrors or experiences, right? Now, Sagittarius here really kind of represents the peak, the top of the chart, the peak of the development of the individual. Once we reach here, we really start to merge with society and the collective mind as a whole. We talked about this a lot in the course. Capricorn is really the outer world. This is systems and hierarchies, and authority. This is really where we're seen out in the outer world. It has a lot to do with our career. It has a lot to do with systems and structures, from government all the way to the structures of a household, right? So Aquarius is the collective consciousness. It's humanity as a whole. And Pisces is that collective unconscious that starts to merge with the entire Akashic field itself. From this point on, I call this the backside of the mountain, this being the peak, the pinnacle, this being the backside of the mountain, where we start this, what's called the dissolution process, and we start to merge back with the whole to be reborn from it once again in the spring. This being the peak of that quest to know thyself. And if we are questing to know thyself, this is where we can really experience the peak of that, particularly through this like esoteric hidden constellation that sits beyond Sagittarius. It has its foot on the ecliptic, it has its foot in this realm, but it's starting to push beyond, right? So the constellation of Ophiuchus falls here throughout Sagittarius. This star falls right about here. The main star falls right about here. And this is the area of the sky that activates the axis mundi. It activates the galactic center. It activates the pole star. It activates this source of singularity within. And this is the peak of it. Okay? All right. So this is the peak of our hero's journey. Now, this also plays out in your own chart through the houses as well, but archetypally through the signs, through the seasons, this is the peak of that hero's journey. This is where we obtain that spiritual boon, that spiritual wisdom that this quest has been about. Once we start to merge back with society, that is when we are returning to the village in order to share what it is that we obtained. Perhaps when we merge back with the collective psyche, that which each one of us individually quest out into the unknown to obtain, once we merge back with the whole, perhaps we share that with the collective psyche, helping us as a whole to awaken. All right, so Sag traditionally governs the 9th house. If you are an Aries rising, Sagittarius will govern your 9th house. If you are any other rising sign, it's going to fall in another house. But it's Sagittarius season, so we're all feeling this energy to a certain extent. It's kind of like this mixed with whatever other house this falls in for you, right? So the 9th house is the house of this like abstract, higher philosophical mind. It's the house of belief systems, higher education, teachers, gurus, guides, mentors. Chiron, the centaur of Sagittarius, was the teacher, the guide, the mentor for pretty much all of the heroes, like pretty much all of the heroes of the Greek pantheon. Chiron trained them all, including Ophiuchus. Ophiuchus, the healer, the physician. He learned his healing arts through Chiron. I actually had a client mention that to me in a session recently, and I was like, really? And I like re-looked into the myth, and I was like, oh my god, he did. It was him. Okay, so mentors. It's the house of travel, religion, higher courts, which is something it's going to be a key theme of that day. We'll get there a little bit later, the UN. Media, the internet, publishing, expansion into realms we are not familiar with. My dog's barking, but I think he's actually going to stop. The quest, both the physical, like traveling across the world to expand your mind, and the metaphysical journeys. I have a stellium. I have been nowhere. I have traveled to Oregon because my dad lives there twice. I've been there twice. And I've been to Mount Shasta, which is like Northern California, twice. I think that's it. Like, I've been nowhere. But because my Jupiter is a retrograde, a lot of mine are these internal metaphysical journeys that help me acquire a lot of like personal wisdom and inner growth, not so much outer adventure. But this is the house of overall expansion of the mind, which Sagittarius governs as well. All right, so Sag is associated with the abstract mind, belief systems, higher education. These are all things I said before. There's a little bit in here that's different. Whatever, I'm just going to read it. Guides, mentors, travel, religion, higher courts, media, the internet, publishing, expansion into realms we are not familiar with, the quest, both physical and metaphysical journeys, and an overall expansion of the mind. It's associated with idealism, optimism. This energy is scattered, but it's honest. It's restless. It's exaggerated. It's intuitive. It's assertive. It's associated with active manifestation. It's self-confident. And it's ready for the moment. I want to note that this moon, while I do think it's a good moon for manifesting, it is in a trine to the North Node. So anything you try to manifest that is not in alignment with your fate and destiny is probably not going to work out. But if you're trying to manifest to find that equilibrium or that alignment with your path, your fated destined path, this is the moon that can do it. You'll have to make right with Neptune. You have to be okay with not fully seeing the whole picture and having some essence of faith and trust and like intuitive guidance. Okay. So this energy is self-confident. It's ready for the moment. Now, this is mutable fire. So it's fire that's moving towards something. In this case, it's moving towards the spiritual realm, okay? The fire signs kind of play out like this. Aries, the first sign of the zodiac and the first fire sign, sparks the zodiac into life. It is this start of an impulse, okay? Leo, the fixed fire sign, sustains this impulse. And when we get to Sagittarius, this is where we ask ourselves, okay, where do I go with this impulse? What is the point? That's why we start asking ourselves all of these deep philosophical questions of life, like, why am I here? What am I doing? What is the point? Where am I going? And you start questing into the quest to know thyself. You start journeying into these higher spheres of consciousness, okay? So in mundane astrology, Sagittarius is associated with morality, religion, and international law. Institutions like the WHO, the UN, the World Economic Forum, these sort of like international agencies. And we're going to be having a UN vote or resolution that's set for this day. We'll get to that when I get to finally open my notebook and we get over to the chart. Okay, whatever. We'll just do this now because I might forget. Okay, so you guys know that they voted on the ceasefire the other day. It was like 15 countries. And America vetoed it. Well, apparently Egypt and Mauritania, which I am not really great with geography. I didn't even know that that was a country. Apparently it's in Northwest Africa. It's an Islamic country in Northwest Africa. I learned that today. But those two countries, Egypt and Mauritania, which I might be pronouncing wrong, put in a call to action. It's called UN Resolution 377A. And this is in response to the U.S. vetoing the ceasefire. And they're calling an emergency meeting at the UN in New York tomorrow, right about the time that this moon is going to be exact. So I find this interesting for a couple of different reasons. If you guys were here for the last video, we talked about how the asteroid Rosh Shalom was in alignment with the moon. It's actually conjunct this moon now. It's a little bit of a wider orb than it was before, but it is still very much there. Where is it at? It's 2 degrees off. It's at 22 degrees of Sag, conjunct this moon. So we talked about in the last video how Rosh Shalom is an asteroid that commemorates the first ever peace treaty in the Middle East, which happened after the Camp David peace accords, and was a treaty that was signed between the U.S., Egypt, and Israel. The UN was not involved. They were pissed about this. They believed they should have been involved, and no Palestinians were involved in this treaty. And at that time, I was like, I wonder if we're going to hear something from Egypt. I wonder what it is about this asteroid. Like, what is this going to manifest? Well, I find it interesting that a lot of these same players are involved in this. America, who helped to orchestrate that peace treaty in secret, vetoed the ceasefire. Egypt is now calling for an emergency call to action at the UN in order to try to force a ceasefire. Apparently, even if they do, Israel can just ignore it. They don't have to actually go for it. But it's interesting that this archetypal narrative is rising once again. But we can see how religion is involved, morality is involved, international law, the UN is involved. Other aspects of mundane astrology associated with Sagittarius is shipping and trade, communication, foreign relations, the media, and the law. Okay, so herbs associated with Sagittarius are almond, cloves, dandelion, mint, sage, and myrrh. And I always like to point out that Sagittarius governs books, both the reading and the writing of them. I always try to take a Sag moon to try to manifest things in regards to the books I'm attempting to compile and write. I'm trying to fix this pillow here for my back, but I'm struggling. Okay. But yeah, if you want to just sit there and read a bunch of books, perhaps that's how the message is supposed to come through to you. If you want to set intentions around writing a book, consuming certain books, or whatever it may be, this could be the moon to do it. Especially if you are an Aries rising and this falls in your 9th house. Okay. I'm going to link this on Patreon for you guys. This, I don't know, it's probably kind of hard to read here. You can take a screenshot if you want now to try to follow along, but I'm going to link this over on Patreon after I'm done here. This is the calendar for the month of December. All of the traditional aspects in lunations, all of the galactic esoteric ones that I honed in on. We're going to touch on many of this here as we get to the chart, but you will have access to this as an image linked below the post on Patreon, so keep an eye out for that. This is also the art that goes along with it, so I don't know if I told you guys yet. I know, maybe if you follow my stories, you know, but I don't know if I've announced it over here, that I'm in the process of making a 2024 calendar. I'm printing them. You guys will have them available to purchase if you would like. And it's going to go all the way through January of 2025, because I'm not going to get them out until probably the end of January 2024. But it will go all the way through January 2025, and it will have each month broken down like this with all the shit going down. Down at the bottom, it will have a little bit of information on some of the archetypes that are prevalent that month. So for this month, we have Psyche and Eros, the Galactic Center, and the Great Attractor. and like a little snippet of information on that. And then it has the art. So it would hang on the wall like this with the art up here and the calendar down here. And this is just like a archetypal depiction of the month. You know, we got Mercury retrograde starting, the Sagittarius season moving into Capricorn season. Mercury transits over the galactic center 3 times during its retrograde period. We have the winter solstice, the activation of Ophiuchus and the galactic center and the axis mundi. Lots of Psyche, Eros activations. This is Ophiuchus. This is a picture of the galactic center. It's a very galactic month. This is a picture of the asteroid Psyche herself. What fixed star was that? I can't remember. Maybe I just put a random star because that has to be a specific star. I know I did that for a reason. I don't know. I can't remember. I'll have to figure out why I put that there. This is a very foggy adventure into like a mystical wonderland because Neptune is here. You know, things aren't very clear, but they are magical nonetheless. We have oppositions to the pole star this month. This is a depiction of the supercluster of 100,000 galaxies that are all being pulled towards the Great Attractor, which the sun also aligns with this month. All of which is depicted here, all of which we will talk about as we get to the chart. So let's get to the chart. I'm trying to figure out if I want to do the one book I want to touch on now or later. Okay, well, let's just do this now. Okay, so let's talk about what is in conjunction to this moon. There's more asteroids conjunct that we'll get to at the end when I kind of like rattle them all off. But these are the ones I want to kind of like hone in on first, okay? So the sun and moon fall at 20 degrees, 40 minutes of Sagittarius, tropical Sagittarius. The moon falls on 12/12, and it falls at 3:32 p.m. So real quick, I want to just kind of point out the numerology of this and how they, the powers that want to be, will probably find this day pretty cool. And we'll probably, I mean, they already have this UN thing planned for the day, but they probably have more planned, all right? So it's 12/12, right? Which is 1, 2, and 1, 2, which if we add those together, it's 3, 3, 33, right? So it's a 33 day. Now the moon also falls at 3:32 p.m. That's when it's exact. So this means that the first minute of the new moon's technical waxing, so the first minute past that exact degree of being new, that first minute of the building of the full moon, the waxing of the moon, is 3:33. So 3:33 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So I just wrote here, watch this time zone. Like I know that the UN thing is in New York, so that's on the East Coast, but I don't know. Something's telling me to watch the West Coast. I don't know. This time zone, I feel like numerically, it seems significant. Regardless, the 12/12 is 3/3, and this moon is kind of nicely aspected. So I definitely think that they will take advantage of this in some way. And we already have the Beetlejuice occultation, which was tonight, which we will get to in a second because I have a whole theory on how they already harnessed that, but we'll get there in a second. All right, let's do this first. All right, so the sun and moon, 20 degrees. Literally, you guys conjunct my moon, conjunct my Uranus, although mine are a little bit closer to the galactic center. They're like right here, 23 degrees. Conjunct Psyche and conjunct the third eye of Ophiuchus. All right, so Psyche is an archetype we have covered extensively. You guys, there's lots of videos, especially here on YouTube. I can't get too deep into the mythology. Down here below on the calendar, I have a little summary of the like astrological associations with this asteroid. The asteroid is number 16 if you want to put it in the Luna software or in astro.com to see where this falls in your chart. I actually have Psyche conjunct my Venus in my chart, and Psyche and Venus's mythologies are intertwined. But looking to see where Psyche falls in your chart will help you to understand how this archetype manifests in your reality, what house, what sign, what aspects it may be making to other planets. So astrologically, Psyche is associated with psychic and physical bonding, raw erotic love, and psychological wounds, recovery, and the ascension of our soul. The word psyche we think of today as the mind, but the word psyche is Greek for soul. That's what it means. This asteroid is associated with the recognition of childhood trauma, trials, tests, quests, and initiations. The initiations of the soul that ultimately makes us gods. Much like Ophiuchus is working to become God-like in his healing modalities. Psyche is the first human in Greek mythology to ever become a god. And she does so through divine partnership, divine union with Eros, her divine partner, and the passing of many trials, tests, and quests, particularly her 4 initiations. There's a really, really great lecture on the YouTube channel of the Philosophical Research Society on this myth that I highly recommend you guys go and watch, particularly this month, because he does a great job of breaking it down from like a Jungian perspective, like a symbolic perspective. Okay, so this asteroid is also associated with memories, insight, psychic impressionability, psychological recovery, and the state of your mental health. Some students of Jungian psychology have chosen the Psyche myth as the female story, considering it symbolic of the effort to bring the unconscious up to the realm of the conscious. Whereas the male myth is the Arthurian legend of the Holy Grail and the needing to return to the feminine within. So Psyche is the first human to ever become a god, and she does so in a very patriarchal pantheon. And even in this very patriarchal pantheon, it is this divine feminine force, the unconscious, becoming conscious, that makes us god-like. Okay, I'm going to try to summarize this myth in a very quick fashion because it's just such a key player in this whole month. Okay, we have the sun making its exact conjunction with Psyche, the same time it makes its exact conjunction with the galactic center. So the sun transits the galactic center every year right before the winter solstice. But this year, the same time that it's transiting this galactic point, it's also exactly conjuncting Psyche. It's exact that day. It's conjunct right now at the time of this moon. It's conjunct both the sun and the moon, but it becomes exact the same time that the sun transits the galactic center right before the winter solstice. Mercury retrograde will also be transiting over Psyche right before it conjuncts the galactic center. Psyche is a key player here. And Mars as well. Mars will meet it later in January. Okay, so Psyche. I'm just trying to figure out if I need to go bring my dog in here because he's barking out the door. Alf! I think I have to go shut the front door. Okay, I'm just gonna, Eddie's in the garage with the kids, they're sewing. I'm just gonna tell him to come get the dog. Hold on. Okay. All right. So, like I said, Psyche, first human, Greek mythology, to become a god. And she does so through harsh trials and tribulations that manifest in the realm of ultimately relationship dynamics. As the story goes, Psyche was very beautiful. Our soul, very beautiful. The soul of man, right? Psyche is our soul. She was so beautiful that all of the mortal men were fawning over her and giving her all of this attention. So much so that Venus, who I have conjunct this point, got very jealous. She was like, okay, this is not going to work for me. And so she decided that she was going to send her son, Eros, who is also strongly aspected throughout this month. Eros has been inching closer and closer and closer to Saturn in Pisces, and it makes its exact conjunction. It made its exact conjunction to Saturn in Pisces yesterday. All right. So at the time of this moon, it's still well within orb to an almost exact conjunction to Saturn in Pisces, the depths of that spiritual realm. Okay. So Venus, the goddess of love, of beauty, she was jealous. And so she decided that she was going to send her son, Eros. Sometimes he's referred to as Amor. Sometimes he's referred to as Cupid. He is the dude with the arrow. And he's the son of Venus. And Venus is like, yo, son, I need you to go shoot this chick with an arrow, okay? And I need you to make her fall in love with the vilest of men. And he's like, okay. And so he goes to go and do it, and he sees her, and he's like, wow, like, she really is hot. Mom, you didn't tell me how smoking hot she was. So instead of shooting her with the arrow, he falls in love with her. And he whisks her away, right? So Eros is most closely associated with, like, passion and desire, right? When he shoots you with the arrow, he shoots you with this arrow of passion, right? But the archetype, particularly through, like, even a Jungian lens, the archetype of Eros is much deeper than that. Eros is one of the first forces to have been created in this, like, Greek pantheon. He is the divine lover and partner to Psyche, our soul. This archetype represents the immense primordial force of desire for manifestation and experience. It's this force that fuels the desire to experience, to live, which informs the entire cosmos. It shows active energy, passion, romance, and will to power, including sexual passion and attraction. Eros's symbolism includes the idea of passion as suffering or our will to live, as well as our passion for life. Archetypally speaking, according to Jung, Eros is ultimately the desire for wholeness. And although it may initially take the form of passionate love, it is more truly a desire for psychic relatedness, a desire for interconnection and interaction with other sentient beings. Okay? So Venus is like, yo, Eros, go shoot this bitch with an arrow. Make her fall in love with, like, shitty dudes. And he's like, okay. He goes, he sees her, he's like, I'm not going to shoot her with the arrow. Now, I have this in my chart. I guess you didn't get shot with the arrow, but I mean, that part of the story, that still played out a little bit for me personally, but whatever. So he whisks her away, and they fall in love. But he has some, like, rules where she can't, like, look upon him, so she doesn't really know who he is. She doesn't know he's a god. She doesn't know who he is. But she's fallen in love with him, right? And there's a couple of different ways you can look at this myth. We've looked at it several ways before. Eventually, her sisters come and visit, and they are the ones who convince her to finally look upon him. And when she does, he kind of freaks out, and he runs home to mommy. He doesn't want her to find out that he didn't do what he was supposed to do, which was shoot her with this arrow, and instead he fell for her. Now, when this severing occurs within this relationship dynamic, this is when Psyche is sent into her 4 personal initiations, these 4 tests and quests that she ultimately passes. A lot of the time she's spent, like, celibate in the woods, devoted to the goddess Artemis, like, finding herself. But eventually she passes all these tests and quests, except for the last one, where she does get put to sleep. This is where we get the Sleeping Beauty motif. And it is the kiss of Eros that awakens her. And she gets to rise to Mount Olympus and drink the drink of immortality and become one of the gods. And she does so through this union, through this awakening, through this quest into the forest of the self. There are many different interpretations of this myth. I wish I had linked some videos because we have covered it before. Definitely recommend watching that Philosophical Research Society lecture. It's phenomenal. This is a quote here from a retelling of this myth. It's actually from Cupid and Psyche, but it's the same sort of story. So it says, "If you saw me, perhaps you would fear me, perhaps adore me, but all I ask of you is to love me. I would rather you would love me as an equal than adore me as a god." So a lot of times the story is told, and I am guilty of this, the story is told more so from the angle of, like, him hiding her away because he did not want his mother to find out that he did not follow directions. And I'm sure that is definitely part of it, and part of what Eros is working through is mommy issues, right? But another angle to look at it is that he wanted her to fall in love with his essence, with him, and not a god, not because he is a god, not adore me as this god, but to love him as a man, as an equal. Psyche is our soul, and Eros is that which animates it, ultimately. It's what informs the entire cosmos, all the way down to our soul. And it is the kiss of Eros that awakens Psyche and allows her to become the first god. It allows our soul to become godlike, this passion, this desire, this primordial force that animates all things, right? Okay, so this is one of the archetypes aligned with this moon. It is conjunct the sun and the moon. It will be conjunct the sun in exact alignment at the same time that the sun is in exact alignment with the galactic center, and Mercury retrograde will transit over this point 3 times as it transits the galactic center. Psyche is having a galactic initiation. Our soul is having a galactic initiation the same time that the third eye of Ophiuchus is being transited. First by Mercury. Mercury will hit it again? Yeah, Mercury stations direct at 22 degrees. It won't make it Actually, no, that will be in conjunction with it because the star itself actually falls, I think, exactly at 22. 22, yeah. So Mercury will station direct on the third eye of Ophiuchus. So Mercury will transit that 3 times. The Sun is transiting it now, and Mars will transit it as well. The third eye of the healer, the third eye of the awakened man is being activated right now. At the same time as the depths of our soul is having this galactic activation. Okay, so Ophiuchus, you guys, we have talked about Ophiuchus so many times. Please go back and watch some of those videos. I've really covered it from so many different angles. I always try to kind of go a different direction each time, but like there's a lot of like prerequisite information out there. The Axis Mundi video on YouTube, the Ophiuchus video on YouTube, and then really just like scrolling through I should make a playlist. I should make a playlist of ones because we've really covered Ophiuchus a lot. So Ophiuchus is this like esoteric 13th sign, but it sits outside the zodiac. It doesn't represent a 13th of what the sky is trying to get us. It doesn't represent a 13th of the sky. It represents what the whole sky is trying to get us to do, which is to awaken, liberate ourselves, and integrate our polarities. Ophiuchus or Asclepius is the god of healing, truth, and prophecy. And this moon is like, yes, it's in a square to Neptune, which can bring confusion, illusion, delusion, and fog. But it's in its home sign of Pisces. It's in the depths of the mystical, spiritual realm. It's sitting in a square to this lunation. So this is a tension. This is a trigger. It's a spiritual trigger that's coming to force some sort of action. And this is happening in a square to the third eye of the god of healing, truth, and prophecy. Yes, Mercury is about to station retrograde, and when Mercury stations retrograde, wires are crossed, things get confusing, messages aren't clear. But Mercury retrograde is a process of making a very important message that we didn't get the first time very clear. So when Mercury transited the galactic center the first time, something started to come through, but it was not clear. So now Mercury has to track back and then forward again in order to make sure that the message is coming through clearly. And Mercury is trekking all the way back to the third eye of Ophiuchus. It's really trying to make sure that the spiritual sight is seeing something, and it's seeing it for what it is. But like I said, it's something we probably won't fully understand for 6 months until the full moon culmination of this new moon, new beginning. So it won't be really until the Sag full moon in Gemini season. Okay, so Ophiuchus or Asclepius is the god of healing, truth, and prophecy. Like I said before, he was trained by Chiron, the wounded healer, which is the centaur of Sagittarius. Chiron is also in a wide orb to a trine to this eclipse, to this moon. Sun and moon are both in like a 5-degree orb. It's really not that wide, but a 5-degree orb to Chiron, the wounded healer, the trainer of Ophiuchus or Asclepius. Now, Ophiuchus was trained in the art of healing by Chiron. He's a demigod. He is the son of Apollo and a mortal woman, a princess. Now, Ophiuchus is often referred to as the serpent bearer. He's standing here in the sky, working to try and tame this serpent, right? He's got his foot on the scorpion. Here is the galactic center right here below his foot. This is the star that is aligned with this moon right here, and he's working to tame this serpent so that the serpent can reach for this crown constellation here, the Corona Borealis. And if he can reach for this, he can crown them sovereign. Now, Ophiuchus is not just working to integrate the serpent for no reason. It's karmic, it's ancestral. His father, Apollo, the sun god, was responsible for severing our connection to the serpent. As the story goes, right around the time of the Greek flood, Apollo, the sun god, one half of a set of twins, his sister Artemis being the moon god, him being the sun god, he represents one half of a set of duality. He murdered Gaia's python, her serpent. It was the end of one age and the start of another. It was very symbolic, but he killed Gaia's python, which lived in the belly of the earth always sitting opposite to the sun here. Jesus, that thing just keeps going, huh? The earth always sitting opposite the sun, always transiting opposite the sun. So in the belly of the earth was this python, Gaia's snake, this divine, feminine, very earthly force. And Apollo killed it. He slayed it. And then he stole Gaia's temple, and he made it his temple. And this is when we started to see this death of the earth goddess religions and this rise, which was very healing. The goddess and the earth goddess cults were very rooted in healing, particularly these like feminine, psychic, spiritually aligned, earthly, whether it be like herbs or shamanic experiences, these sort of avenues of healing and prophecy and truth, right? So he killed the serpent, stole her temple, made it the Oracle of Delphi. And then we saw the severing of the serpent, of the goddess, and this rise of solar cults. Well, his son, Ophiuchus, is then responsible for the reintegration of what his father severed. Ophiuchus the man represents that solar consciousness, that masculine consciousness. The serpent represents that unconscious, primordial feminine force of the goddess herself. He's working to integrate her, to tame her, and he does, and he becomes a healer. He becomes a physician. He becomes so good at the healing arts that Zeus is very scared that he is going to make all men immortal, because his healing arts got so good that he was even able to bring the dead back to life. And so Zeus was like, yeah, this isn't going to work for me. So he struck him with a thunderbolt, and then he put him up in the sky and was like, good job, like you figured out life. So we'll put you up here in the most pivotal part of the sky, with your foot on the galactic center, showing us that there is so much more. Okay. All right. I want to kind of just point out a little bit of stuff before we move on. Although I did a pretty good job of summarizing Ophiuchus's energy. All right, so the serpent was seen as a healing agent because it represented prudence and regeneration, wisdom and rebirth. This is the healing side of the ancient goddess. For just as she had the ability to create life, she also had the wisdom and knowledge of how it could be healed, as well as the knowledge of how it could be destroyed, much like these strong galactic forces of the galactic center or the great attractor, which is, all riddled throughout here. They have this essence of both creation and destruction. they're very rooted in that, goddess force. So a fucus or a scepulus was said to have the blood of Medusa in his veins. The asteroid Medusa falls in opposition to this moon. She's retrograde and she is conjunct the Earth. So she's conjunct Gaia. And she is in opposition to this lunation. So he's said to have the blood of Medusa running through his veins, the blood of that goddess, right? The blood of the divine feminine. The blood that flowed on Medusa's left side was said to create fatal poison, while the blood that flowed on her right side was said to be beneficial. Thus, Ophiuchus is connected with all aspects of healing, medicine, and drugs, ranging from the alcohols produced by monks to the knowledge of drugs and herbs in Western and Eastern medicines. I'm just trying to see if I want to do any of that. Okay. All right, so in opposition so in conjunction, not only do we have Psyche, the first human in Greek mythology to ever become a god, but we also have Ophiuchus, the first, he was a demigod. Apollo was his dad, but his mom is just a human princess lady. So he's a demigod. But I always like to point out, we all are demigods. We all are part divine, right? We all are part human and part divine. There is a spark of divinity that resides within us all. This is what is activated throughout our hero's journey, which is peaking right now in Sagittarius. So we have the asteroid Psyche, our soul, strongly aspecting this moon, the galactic center alignments, the Mercury retrograde. We have the third eye of Ophiuchus, all aspecting all of those things as well. The third eye of the healer, of prophecy, of truth, of galactic consciousness, all strongly aspected. Now in opposition, we of course have the Earth, because the Earth is always opposite the Sun. So wherever your Sun is in your chart, your Earth placement is exactly opposite that, because that's how it works. We have Medusa retrograde. This is what we're working to integrate, right? What Ophiuchus, this man, is working to integrate is what was severed, our connection to the earth and its modalities of healing, whether it be herbs or that grounded mother herself. And then we have Medusa there as well. And I love that she's retrograde because it's working to rewrite, restructure, reconfigure that energy in some way. Now this energy can both poison and or heal. And it depends on, I guess it depends on exactly how this is playing out in your chart, what kind of mindset you are in, and kind of also how we navigate this Neptune energy, because this is just especially while in Pisces, it's a wide range of triggers. It can be anything from fear and anxiety and illusion and delusion and insanity to profound prophetic dreams and mystic truths and compassion and higher levels of spiritual love and mystical understanding and just connection to that magical Akashic field. It's a wide range. In opposition to this moon, we also have that Orion occultation that happened tonight. It transited over Betelgeuse, which falls, I believe, at 29 degrees. Where is that? I have it right here. 28 degrees, 45 minutes. So pretty much in alignment with the pole star, which is right here, and the galactic center. And Orion's belt actually falls in exact opposition to the new moon. Okay? So before we move on to the rest of the thing, since we're here now, I just want to talk about this right now. This Orion occultation and how I think they harnessed it. All right, so we're going to talk about Orion here. Let's talk about Orion first, and then I'll tell you how I think that they did this. Okay. So this is from Bernadette Brady's book on fixed stars. You guys know I absolutely love this book. This is a section on Orion, which I don't think we've ever read before. I mean, I have, but I don't know if I've read it to you guys before. So we're gonna dive into this here now. All right, so this is writings from the pyramid texts in Egypt. Okay, in regards to Orion. I fly from you, O men. I am not for the earth. I am for the sky. I have soared to the sky as a heaven. I have kissed the sky as a falcon. I am the essence of God, the Son of God. Behold, the faithful and loving Osiris has come as the stars of Orion, the beautiful one. I have come that I may glorify Orion. My soul is a star of gold, and with him I will traverse the skies forever. Okay, I'm gonna read this, and then I'm gonna tell you what is in my mind that I keep wanting to jump to, but we'll get there in a second. All right. So around 6000 BC, when the stars of Gemini were the rising stars of the equinox, the Egyptians, like most other cultures, measured their year by the rising and setting of the brightest stars, the heliacal risings. We've talked about this when we talked about Sirius. This is when the star rises with the sun. Okay? The importance of a heliacal rising star, one that rises just before the sun, is that the star acts as a herald for the sunrise. The rising sun was considered by the Egyptians to be the infant Horus in the arms of Isis. As the sun rose, signifying the return of God, it appeared to sweep up the star in its light and carry it across the sky. Thus, the god mixed his energy with that of the star, and the star was illuminated by the god. By noon, the sun was no longer seen as the infant Horus, but rather it was the adult Horus, or Ra. And at sunset, it became Osiris, the god of the underworld. Locklear implies that between 6000 and 4000 BC, the importance of the solstice and the spring equinox had been established as the beginning of the agricultural cycle, and that the Egyptians would have noted that Orion rose on the important morning of the spring equinox, which was linked with the annual flooding of the Nile. Indeed, this connecting of the rising of Orion and the equinox had been placed at a far earlier time by Sellers, who pointed out that the last time a star in Orion rose at the equinox would have been about 6700 BC. Then, as now, the brightest and most spectacular constellation in the night sky was Orion. Everybody can see Orion. It's huge, it's big, it's very easy to see. And the image of this huge human-like constellation rising in the pre-dawn light and being, I gotta let my cat in, and being scooped up into the fiery boat of the sun. All right, come on. Come on. Come on, if you're coming, okay, well then don't meow at my door if you're not gonna come in. You coming? All right, Then don't meow at me. Okay. Then, as now, the brightest and most spectacular constellation of the night sky was Orion. And the image of this huge human-like constellation rising in the pre-dawn light and being swooped up in the fiery boat of the sun would have been quite impressive, to say the least. Orion was Osiris, the god. The constellation was not a symbol of God. It was God. God's physical place or appearance, in the same way that Sirius in Canis Major was the dwelling place of Isis, according to the Egyptians. Orion rose with the spring equinox and claimed rulership of this age. The Egyptians knew him as Osiris, and the pharaohs came from him. They were his physical flesh and were returned to him. However, as hundreds of years went by, they noted that less and less of the constellation Orion rose before the dawn on the equinox morning. The effects of precession caused the god to slip lower and lower in the sky. So whereas at one time he was fully risen before sunrise, there came a time when only a part of the constellation was above the eastern horizon before sunrise. The constellation Orion managed to rise for roughly 2,000 years. But the Egyptians knew that their immortal god was moving into the whirlpool and the journey across the water as he slipped into the underworld. Mary Segetz, in her book Plato Prehistorian, talks of the death of Osiris occurring in the 6th millennia, the period when the constellation Orion was slipping from the equinox position, as it seemed to influence the spread and design of the pottery of pre-dynastic Upper Egypt. At this time, there was a sudden spreading of pottery into other areas, which she suggests is reflected in the myth of the journey of Isis in seeking her dead husband. To account, in order to make Horus, which will be the ruler of the next age, okay? To account for these observations, the Egyptians developed the concept of an immortal god dying and passing his throne to his son. This is represented in the this god on the equator, on the ecliptic, being subjected to the rising and setting and dipping into the underworld or the other hemisphere for the other part of the year. Okay, so to account for these observations, the Egyptians developed the concept of an immortal god dying and passing on his throne to his son. Now, one of the features of the constellation Orion is that it contains a bright star called a Betelgeuse, which is the star that was occulted. This is the star Betelgeuse, which is found in Orion's right shoulder. By coincidence, the constellation Taurus, the next constellation to herald the dawn of the equinox, so to take over after Orion, also contains a bright star by the name of Aldebaran, which falls like right here, like 9 degrees of Gemini. So we have Betelgeuse right here, and then right here is the next big bright red star, Aldebaran. So as Osiris died and was replaced by the stars of Taurus, the natural heir to the solar throne appeared. This constellation was therefore considered to be the son of Osiris or Horus. Osiris became the god of the underworld or afterlife, and Horus, his son, ruled the new world order. with a religious philosophy that ran for over 6,000 years. The Egyptians had to create a religion that would allow for 3 generations of gods as 3 constellations slipped over the equinox. We see this play out in Christianity as well. Horus is Aldebaran, the main star of Taurus. Taurus, the bull, is also associated with the god El of the Phoenicians and the early Israelites and the early Canaanites. El was the father god, the father of Yahweh, who was a war god of the Phoenicians and the Canaanites. So El gave way to Yahweh, who then gave way to Christ. Father giving way to Son, Father giving way to Son. And then when we move into the age of Aquarius, we're moving into the age of awakened human collective, the awakened humanity, and or transhumanism and AI, which will be the new god of the new age. But many pantheons have this narrative of father giving way to son as one age dies and another gives forth. This is the Egyptian narrative here. Many modern theologians and mythologists agree that this processional movement of Orion is the source of the religious concept of an afterlife given to us by a god who dies. Osiris or Orion is a prefiguration of Christ, this death and resurrection God. God is immortal. The God also dies. However, in some manner, the dead God then promises us an afterlife in his presence. The following pyramid text captures this Egyptian concept. You sleep that you may awake. You die that you may live. The constellation Orion is therefore an archetype of God. We humans have modeled our male gods on this constellation for probably well over 8,000 years. This is in contrast to the never-setting circumpolar Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, the Big Dipper, the Little Dipper that circles the celestial pole, which is right here. This is the pole star. The pole star falls in exact alignment zodiacally with this main star in Orion. They both fall here at 28 degrees. And the pole star is circumpolar. It never dies. It never sets below the horizon. It never goes to the underworld. And it is representative of the goddess, of the divine mother, the great bear, the mama bear. So our gods die and are resurrected, but the goddess, represented by these circumpolar stars, the goddess do not die in our philosophy. Goddesses may fade, but they are immortal. The she-bear never sets as she circles the pole. However, the male god on the equator and the gods of the ecliptic, even Ophiuchus, are subjected to the hero's journey of the whirlpool. This one constellation, more than any other group of stars, has affected the human race in the most profound way. 4,000 years or so later, the Greeks modified Orion into a giant, an unwelcome admirer of Artemis, or the Pleiades. He's said to have been chasing both Artemis and the Pleiades, who are companions to Artemis, in order to try to club them with the club in his hand here and rape them. Okay. 4,000 years or so later, the Greeks modified Orion into a giant, an unwelcome admirer of Artemis. Artemis in turn created a giant scorpion who stung him on the foot, causing him to go blind. But he regained his sight by watching the sunrise. The myth probably grew from the fact that in the north, as the scorpion rises, so like, hold on. This and this sit opposite each other on the zodiacal wheel, okay? So as the scorpion and Ophiuchus rises, Orion appears to flee or sets. Another version of the story was that Artemis appreciated his advances. I've never heard this narrative before until I read this earlier. But she was tricked into accidentally killing him. He swam out to sea, a metaphor for the constellation slipping into the whirlpool into the sea, where she, mistaking him for driftwood, okay, used him as target practice with her arrows. He was lost to sea. Greek stories echo Egyptian mythology, for their Orion stories have a common flavor of Orion dying or going blind and then being reborn through some involvement with the sun. Okay? So this star of Orion tonight is being reborn, but not through some involvement with the sun. It is, which is very masculine. It is being reborn through some involvement with the asteroids, which are innately feminine in origin, particularly this asteroid, which is literally called Leona. It's literally Leo, like the sun, like a lion, but a female version. It's literally the female lion, a female sun, and it's an asteroid, which I find so significant. Okay, so how do I think they have harnessed this? Okay, so this is my theory. Okay, hold on, let me... okay. All right, so this was actually yesterday. So we know that Elon Musk is really into the symbolism of the X, right? The symbolism of the X is innately tied to Osiris. You see him a lot depicted with his scepter and his staff in a cross across his chest, making an X. We see a lot of Egyptian symbolism echoed throughout Freemasonry, the Master Mason degrees, a lot of the gestures and symbolism that they do in those initiation rites revolve around making X's across your chest. We see this in a lot of Aleister Crowley's ceremonial magic as well, which is rooted in the mythology of Osiris and Horus. And we see the X being used, right? So Elon Musk is very into this X symbolism, as are a lot of the powers that be. I pointed out in the last video that Ra Shalom asteroid is a mixture of Egyptian and Hebrew words, word for peace, and the Egyptian sun god Ra, but that nobody in Egypt today worships Ra. They're mostly Muslim, and there's a little bit of Christians. If there is anybody worshiping the old gods, it's a very small sect of people. But who does worship these old gods? And not as archetypes, not as allegories, but as deities, is a lot of occult sects, particularly rooted in Freemasonry and Aleister Crowley's, whether it be his Thelema or his OTO, or even him being entangled with the space program. You see a lot of X symbolism, and the dark journalists, the dark journalist, which you guys have heard me mention a bunch of times on YouTube. He does a fabulous job of breaking down just how deep this X is rooted within a lot of these like black budget, secret government, occult realms, right? So yesterday, Elon Musk over on X brought back Alex Jones and had a live with Alex Jones and Andrew Tate and was Tucker Carlson part of that, or was Tucker Carlson just, he interviewed Alex Jones later. I don't know, but anyway, he brought back Alex Jones. So this is a symbolic rebirth, right? Alex Jones is coming back from the underworld, from a death and rebirth. He's coming back up, and he's coming back up into the limelight. He's over on Tucker's podcast. He's doing lives over on X with Elon Musk and Andrew Tate and tons of other people. All of these people, from Andrew Tate to Alex Jones to even Tucker Carlson, they all have had a death and a rebranding or a rebirth. And they all are uniting over there on X and on each other's platforms. So this is how I think that they are harnessing this Orion occultation, is a resurrection of some of these controlled op figures. There's something else I wanted to point out about Elon Musk, but I think we should wait until we get to the asteroids at the end. So, we also have the moon mission happening on Christmas Eve. So on December 24th, they are sending an unmanned mission to the moon in preparation for the Artemis missions, which will happen later, which are being launched by SpaceX. This one is being launched by a different company that I had never even heard of until earlier, Astrobotics. And the lander is called this. This is the lunar lander that will be landing on the moon on December 24th. Right after the sun dies and is reborn. So the sun stands still from the equinox on December 21st through December 24th. It seems to stand still in the sky before itself is reborn and it begins to move on again. So they're tying this moon mission to Christmas, pretty much. And the archetypes around this are significant. One, it's called this. I don't know how to pronounce this, but this is a type of falcon. This is particularly the type of falcon that is associated with Horus, as well as Osiris. And Ra. They're all kind of merge into each other, much like El and Yahweh and Christ all are iterations of each other. Horus and Osiris and Ra are all iterations of each other, and they are associated with falcons, particularly this type of falcon. Also the dates. So this birth date of Christmas, or December 24th, is tied to Osiris. Is tied to Horus, who is the Egyptian Christ figure. It's tied to, of course, Jesus Christ. It's also tied to Mithras, which is a Persian figure, which is a precursor to a lot of the Christian mythology. And they're all tied to this time of year. So I really see this moon mission as a ritual. They all are. They all are and all always have been since the fucking beginning. But this one is very rooted in these Egyptian archetypes. Whatever air. The moon mission. Okay. I just need to like get some of this stuff off as I talk about it. Okay, so this is the moon mission. We don't really... Oh, there was something that I saw here that I wanted to point out. What was it? Oh, the how long it is. All right, so the launch is scheduled for December 24th at the earliest, with a window that runs up until the 26th. So they might like postpone it, but they'll probably do it on the 24th. And another launch opportunity in January. So after a 3 to 33 day Earth orbit, so they don't know if they're going to be out there orbiting Earth for 3 days or 33 days, but they know it's going to be a 3. And a cruise to the moon. So they're either going to orbit around the Earth for 3 days or 33 days and then cruise to the moon. And then that will be followed by a 4 to 25 day lunar orbit where it orbits around the moon. And then it will descend. But I found this interesting. Like this, I'm sure they have some sort of reason as to why they can only land at that time because of the alignments that need to occur. You know what I mean? But I don't think that's an accident. You know, it seems a little significant to me. All right, let's go back over here. And let's see. So we had this Orion occultation, right? So this god of death and rebirth is being reborn. People are coming up from the fucking underworld, particularly who are probably rooted in some sort of occult organization. This is not only an occultation, which the realm of the occult really does love. The occultation of certain stars by the moon is a key aspect in a lot of like celestial magic, right? Certain moments of occultation. This is the same thing that happens at an eclipse. Is when something is obscured and then reborn, right? So in this case, this is this aspect of our God consciousness being reborn because of the feminine aspects of our psyche. Much like the psyche asteroid being all riddled throughout the awakening of this third eye, right? This awakened mind is awakening from the depths of our soul. Okay? There's more I want to say, but we're going to move on. Okay, so let's talk about some of the other aspects to this new moon. All right, so the main closest aspect that I probably should point out first is the trine to the north node. So the north node is at 21 degrees of Aries. The moon falls at 20 degrees of Sag. So this trine to the north node is the tightest, strongest, most significant aspect at the time of this moon. All right. Eris is not too far away. It's over at 24 degrees. So it's also a key player. So the north node is the node of fate and destiny, right? This is a new story that is just starting out. The nodes have really just started to get into Aries and Libra. It's at 21 degrees. It's still got all this way to go. We've had a little bit of eclipse energy manifesting in those signs. This narrative is just kicking off, right? We don't really understand it yet. This is that Neptune square. It's still in the fog. We're being guided intuitively, spiritually. The hand of fate and destiny is pulling us to where we're meant to go, but we can't see the picture yet. We can't fully grasp what it is. We know it's a little chaotic, it's a little turbulent, but we can't fully grasp it, right? So at the time of this moon, yeah, we got Mercury stationing. We got Mercury about to go retrograde. We've got a square to Neptune. Okay, I know a lot of astrologers are going to be honing in on that. They're going to be like, oh my God, Mercury stationing the same time. Nothing is making sense. Don't trust the messages. Blah, 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 blah. Neptune, everybody is going to be confused and in their delusions and in their fantasy. And like, yeah, that will be happening for a vast amount of the public. But for those of us who are doing the work and are working to kind of like hone our spiritual gifts, this is a beautiful lunation. It's really, really aspected nicely. Even the Mercury retrograde, which we're going to get to here in a second. So this trine to the North Node. This moon is being fueled. It's harmoniously aspecting the nodes. It's harmoniously aspecting both nodes. It's in a trine to the North Node, and it's in a sextile to the South Node, harmoniously working with where we've been and where we're going. And it's doing so in maybe an unpredictable, erratic sort of way. And perhaps some of this unpredictable, erratic energy is designed to make us uncomfortable enough to act. We also have this quincunx to Uranus. Uranus is at 19 degrees of Taurus, and it falls in a quincunx to this moon. So a quincunx is an irritating aspect. It's a disconnect. You guys have heard me mention that Rick always calls it the pebble in the shoe, right? This is annoying, but it's not the kind of tension like a square that forces us into action in order to create a resolution, in order to find a compromise. Squares force us to do that. They're triggers, they're tensions, they're conflicts that come to force us to act. Now, needed action that brings us into alignment. They're not bad. They're needed. They're so fucking needed. But quincunx also need us to act. There's a need for adjustment. There's a need for compromise. But it's just annoying. It's not a strong enough energy that forces us to act. We can ignore it. We can keep walking around with the fucking pebble in our shoe, or we can sit down and we can take it out. Now, this is Uranus. So what it's asking us is to break free, is to liberate ourselves in some way. And in this case, it's probably revolves around some sort of dogmatic fixed belief that is keeping us from our growth. It is keeping us from our expansion. It is keeping us from our fate. It is keeping us from our destiny. And it's rooted in some sort of fixed, dense belief system, perhaps around our self-worth, perhaps around safety or security. Perhaps it's around possessions or finances, or perhaps it's around our value system. Okay, we also have a square not only to Neptune over here in Pisces, but Neptune is in conjunction to Pandora. Pandora is actually in an exact square to the galactic center as we're preparing for all of these galactic alignments. So a box can open. This is Pandora's box. I've told this myth a bunch of times. I need to get better at like summarizing these. It's shorter. Some people refer to this as the asteroid Pandora. I call it Pandora's box because it looks like a box. So Pandora's box was a result of Prometheus stealing fire, knowledge, and giving it to humanity so that humans could into that quest to know thyself and become like gods, awaken, right? Fire is the only one of the elements that we as humans can make. We can't make water, we can't make earth, we can't make air, but we can rub some fucking sticks together and make fire. It makes us like the gods, right? We can cook our food, we can see in the dark, we can develop civilization because of it, right? So Prometheus stole fire, gave it to the humans, gave them knowledge, gave them fire. And he was punished for it, and humanity was punished for it. And humanity's punishment was Pandora's box. Pandora's box was given to Pandora by Zeus, and he knew she was going to open it. And you know what? I'm glad she did. She is pretty much like Eve, where she is blamed for this like original sin. Like Pandora opened the box, so everything is shitty. Eve ate the apple, so we fell, and everything is shitty. But all of the things that Pandora supposedly let out of this box, like greed and hate and war and rape and all of these horrors, they already existed. And the gods themselves were partaking in them all. So she didn't let anything out of that box that didn't already exist within the human condition. She let it out in order for us to process. Now that we have fire, now that we have knowledge, we must use that knowledge to face these aspects of ourselves and our collective psyche. So all of these things flew out of the box, and she freaked out, and she closed the box, and she trapped one thing in there. So this box right here really only has one thing left in it, and that's hope. Hope was at the bottom of the box. We couldn't get to it without addressing all of these aspects of the human condition. So she let out all these shadows for us to address within ourselves. And so Neptune is transiting the depths of the collective unconscious. It's in the depths of Pisces, its home sign. It's conjunct this box, right? But it's this box of, it's this box of all of life's horrors, but also the hope within the chaos, right? So this Neptune square here, if we fight it, this is mutable energy, all right? We are in a mutable sign. This is square. Neptune is a mutable energy. This is go with the flow energy. And this is like, if you go with the flow, you can't go wrong energy, because the North Node is helping to guide us, right? If you fight this, you can go wrong, right? So if you try to, and this is hard for Sag season, because Sag wants to know the truth. Sag is, even though it's philosophical and expansive and it can like think outside the box, it is doing so to a certain end, because it wants to find that ultimate truth, even if it's dogmatic, even if it's a fixed religious belief system, it want, or some sort of higher academic field. It wants to find the truth, right? But Ophiuchus and that like galactic energy, once we start to tap into that, we know that the truth is so subjective and bigger and vaster and grander than we could even fathom. And so that's when we start to lean into that mutable energy, and we start to just go with the flow and embrace the adventure, embrace the quest, embrace the journey, embrace the unknowable. And this Neptune square here is asking us to embrace the unknowable, go through and go with the flow. All right, this is the essence of psychic sensitivity, of spirituality, of mysticism. Yes, this can bring some illusion, delusion, confusion, yada yada. But if you are really working to hone some of these things, you're just leaning into Neptune's mystic truths. They're in there too. Like, yeah, there's a lot of fog, but amongst the fog are in profound mystic truths. And Neptune, the planet of psychic senses, is activating the third eye of Ophiuchus during these massive galactic activations. This is the god of prophecy, of truth itself. If we can go through with the flow, and we can almost let go of the need to know and just open up to the great unknown and become this vessel for the unseen, which is what we're going to get to when we get to the cards. So much will be shown to us, particularly over this Mercury retrograde cycle and into over the next 6 months. All right, so we actually have a grand cross here. So it's not just in a square, it's Neptune over at 24 degrees, but it's in a square to Juno as well over here at 18 degrees. So Juno is the planet associated, is the asteroid associated with partnership, domestic partnership, commitment, relationships, marriage. And so a lot of the triggers, the conflict, the struggles that are coming to force us into some sort of needed action during this time can be coming from the realm of like service to these domestic dynamics. Okay? All right, so let's talk about Mercury retrograde. All right, so Mercury will be retrograding over the galactic center. It already transited over it back on the 28th of November. It transited over it for the first time. And then it went over here into Capricorn, and now it is stationing retrograde at the time of this moon. And is making many harmonious aspects that if we can figure out how to work with Neptune and not against Neptune, can be really amazing. All right, so I'm going to go over to my software so I can click around and show you the dates and stuff. All right, so let's talk about these Mercury transits. All right, so Mercury stations retrograde at, what's that? 11 p.m. So the moon tomorrow is at 3:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and then at 11 o'clock at night, Mercury will station retrograde. At the time of the moon, it is stationing. So it is not moving forward, it is not moving backward, it is stationary, it is still. It is very close to Earth, and it is being very strongly felt. This energy of the mind, of the message, of information. This essence of the messenger is and the message is very strongly riddled throughout this chart. Mercury is the messenger. It's going over the galactic center, the center of our galactic mind. The moon is also conjunct the asteroid Iris, which is associated with rainbows. She's the goddess of rainbows, but she is also a messenger, and she is much like Mercury. She delivers messages back and forth between the mortals and the gods, and she even has a caduceus, just like Mercury. So she is conjunct this moon. She's associated with messages. Mercury going over the galactic center, associated with messages. And then Betelgeuse, the star here, apparently, according to the Hindus, is known as a messenger. So the star of a messenger was just reborn from the depths of the unconscious, reborn because of an asteroid eclipse. Okay, so Mercury stationing retrograde the same day as this moon. And at the time that it stations, it is making aspects to two planets. It is aspecting Venus, and it is aspecting Jupiter. Those are astrology's two most beneficial planets. And it's aspecting both of those planets in harmonious aspects. So now Mercury is stationing retrograde in a sextile to Venus, a harmonious aspect. Not as harmonious as a trine. It needs a little work. In this case, the work is working with our others, relationships, values, right? And it's stationing retrograde in a trine to Jupiter, which is retrograde, which speaks to a lot of internal growth and expansion. The message is coming from within and not without, and coming because of your personal internal exploration. I have Jupiter retrograde in my chart. All of my information comes through me, like me exploring, me expanding, me learning, me experiencing, and then having revelations. Like that is Jupiter retrograde. So at the time that Mercury stations, it's harmoniously aspecting astrology's two most harmonious, beneficial, optimistic, benefic planets. This is fucking beautiful in and of itself, but it gets even better. So this is on the 12th. On the 18th, Mercury will come into its exact trine with Jupiter retrograde. While Mercury is retrograde and Jupiter is retrograde, Mercury and Jupiter are the planets of the mind. Mercury is the planet of our logical, analytical, conscious mind, the bringer of consciousness, of information. Jupiter takes that information and turns it into wisdom. Jupiter is the planet of the higher philosophical mind. They're both going to be retrograde. They're both going to be harmoniously in a trine to each other during that retrograde. Even though our minds are retrograde, they're focused inward, they're working harmoniously. Our higher and lower mind are working as one in order to bring this message through. Okay? On the 21st, which is the solstice, Mercury retrograde will make a sextile to Saturn. So not only is it harmoniously aspecting astrology's two benefics, two most beneficial planets, it's also harmoniously aspecting Saturn, the great malefic, the planet that is supposed to be the least beneficial, although it's not at all. It has its purpose. Its purpose is there to test us and karmically in order for us and restrict us and limit us in such a way that we can build things that are sustaining. So this it does bring tests. So this could bring a sort of spiritual test around the solstice, but it's working harmoniously with Saturn in Pisces. Square to Neptune, sextile. It will square Neptune later when it gets over into here, and when it stations, it will be in square to Neptune. But right now it's in a sextile to Saturn. So harmoniously working with those spiritual tests. Now, we'll have to put an effort in order to reap the rewards of this harmonious aspect. So, keep that in mind around the solstice, but this is beautiful. Now, on the 22nd, Mercury will conjunct the sun at 0 degrees of Capricorn. So Mercury retrograde will be conjunct the sun as it is becoming the solstice sun at 0 degrees of that cardinal degree. This Mercury retrograde is happening at the height of the solstice. Later that day, Mercury will move in to Sagittarius again, and it will start to conjunct Psyche and the galactic center with its exact conjunction to the galactic center being on the 25th. Now this later in the day, sometime between then and then. So on the calendar I have it exact. So let's see. On the 25th at 4:16 a.m. to 4:35 a.m. it will be exact. So it will conjunct the galactic center. Then, for the second time, it will then do so for a third and final time in January, on January 11th. That's when the message will really start coming through clearly. Now on the 26th, which is the day of the Cancer full moon, this is when things get a little bit tenser. All right, so it's still the moon is beautifully aspected, but this is the day that Mercury comes into its exact square with Neptune. So this is going to be a Cancer full moon, so we will already be in that like psychic, emotional, intuitive realm. And then Mercury retrograde will be in a square to Neptune. So this is nebulous, this is foggy, this is that fantasy multi-dimensional realm, this very boundaryless realm will be seeping through. This will be the height of the confusion, the height of the fog will be right around this moon. So this moon, a Cancer moon in general is asking us to go inward. It literally is the realm of our inner subconscious reality. Mercury will be retrograde. The moon itself will be in a trine to, it will be in a sextile to Jupiter retrograde and a trine to Saturn. So the moon is harmoniously aspecting the great benefic and the great malefic, working harmoniously with the planet of expansion and contraction. A lot of the expansion is internal. We're being asked to go inward. This is where the messages will be found. If we focus too much on the outer world, this is where the confusion will manifest. Now, on the 27th, Mercury retrograde will exactly conjunct Mars. And it will do so in that square to Neptune. So this is really the time where, we are feeling the call to act, but we don't really know exactly what we're doing. Because Mercury is retrograde and it's square in Neptune. It's confusion, it's illusionary. We are walking seemingly blindly down, I guess there's not even a path. We are walking seemingly blindly into the fog, being guided by our intuition. And that's the only way to navigate this. If we try to take over, if our will tries to take over and guide us throughout this, we will definitely get lost. We have to just kind of go with that gravitational force, right? We have Mercury transit. Mars finished transiting over the Great Attractor earlier in the month. All of these planets transit over the Great Attractor, and they will all be transiting over the Galactic Center. And both of these have this very strong gravitational force, as does all of these trines here to the North Node. This is a gravitational force of fate and destiny leading us. So I'm just going to read what I have here on the calendar for the Galactic Center and the Great Attractor, which would be just aspected by so many things, right? So the Galactic Center, which falls here at 27 degrees, is the black hole at the center of the Milky Way, which our sun aligns with right before each solstice, before our periods of extreme polarity. But it reminds us that there is so much more than this dualistic reality we see before us. This point, rooted in galactic consciousness, far beyond that of our own solar logos, a consciousness of over 100 billion stars, helps us to reach beyond the split to the galactic singularity, beyond the self, beyond the ego, to the divine source at the center of our greater galactic mind. Black holes warp both time and space and pierce the very fabric of space itself. They are simultaneously here, yet beyond this reality. When strongly activated, we find ourselves in the realm of the all, and anything is possible. So not only is this Mercury retrograde in a square to Neptune, which is nebulous and confusing and rooted in that multidimensional spiritual realm full of illusions and lies and mystic truths, but it's also transiting the galactic center, which literally warps time and space. We have to embrace this essence of the unknown. That is how the messages will need to come through. We can't expect things to make sense when we're in the realm of not making sense. Like, this is reality perforating. This is a warping of time and space itself. All right, so the Great Attractor, which was also aspected by all of these planets throughout the month of December, falls around 15 degrees of Sagittarius. This is an extreme, gravitationally strong, unknown force. We don't know what it is, but it holds together our supercluster of over 100,000 galaxies. So the galactic center holds together 100 billion stars, but the Great Attractor holds together 100,000 galaxies, which all hold 100 billion stars. All of which are being drawn towards this central force, the Great Attractor, which some mainstream astronomers have even likened to God, to a 0 point force of creation or destruction known as the Great Attractor. We do not know what this force is. Some say it's dark matter or dark energy. The force is responsible for both the expansion and the contraction of our universe. Some say it's, well, God. Is there really a difference? The supercluster is our largest galactic mind, second only to the cosmic web, the universe itself. This point pulls you into the great unknown, into the divine adventure, the mystery beyond the mundane, into the realm of what is yet to be discovered. This Mercury retrograde wants us to embrace the unknown, embrace the confusion, embrace this wonderland that makes no sense of warped time and space, because there's a message in there. And in order to get that message, which is literally coming from the center of the galaxy itself, it will require spiritual tests, spiritual triggers. I wrote here inner spiritual struggles that will lead to action. And this embracing of the unknowable. Okay? Okay, so let's see. We're still talking about Mercury retrogrades. This was on the 27th. We have this conjunction of Mars, which is going to want us to act, but make sure you aren't, like, just be careful with the things you say around this time, because we aren't making sense. Okay, so on the 30th, Jupiter, which was trining Mercury at the time that it stationed retrograde, will station direct. So our higher mind stations direct before our lower mind. Just literally a day before. Because on the... Okay, wait, this is on the 30th that it stations direct. And then on the 1st, Mercury stations direct. So Jupiter stations direct on the 30th, and then Mercury stations direct on the 1st, on the New Year, on New Year's Day. And it stations direct at 22 degrees conjunct the third eye of Ophiuchus, which is what this Mercury retrograde has been working to try to open. Some sort of prophetic truth. Okay? When Mercury stations direct, it is stationing direct in a trine to the North Node. This message is in regards to what this North Node of fate and destiny will be building in whatever house Aries rules in your chart over the next 18 months or so, as we traverse this Aries Libra eclipse cycle. That is what this message is all about. Your next fated chapter, your next fated story. And it will be stationing direct in a square to Neptune, so you won't know what this is truly about, but you have to trust it on faith and follow that sort of gravitational force, right? It'll also be in a square to the moon. It will be in a T-square to Neptune and the moon. which helped start this. When the moon was here in Sagittarius at the degree that Mercury is at now is when Mercury stationed retrograde. Then Mercury will make it all the way back to where the moon was as the moon squares that point. And then on the 3rd, Mercury will be in exact conjunction with the third eye of Ophiuchus, and then on the 11th, it will transit the galactic center for the third and final time. And this will be where the clarity starts to come through. We won't really feel it until the end of the shadow period, right around the 20th, when Mercury exits the shadow of where it started its retrograde. And then really it won't be for 6 months till everything really culminates and you're like, oh, that's what that was all about. Okay, let's see. Anything else here that I want? Okay, let's talk about these other asteroids here. Okay. So there's a couple other asteroids that are aspecting this moon that I don't find as more mundane or I don't find as significant. All right, so like I said before, Iris is at 20 degrees conjunct this moon. Iris is like a feminine Mercury. She's like a feminine messenger. She's the goddess of rainbows, but she's a messenger just like Mercury. She delivers messages back and forth. We never really hear about her because she's probably a chick. I mean, she is a chick, but that's probably why we don't hear about her. But she has a caduceus, just like Mercury, and she is a messenger of the gods, and she is exactly conjunct this moon. We also have the asteroid Kiev conjunct this moon, and we have the president of Ukraine meeting in DC, like literally right now. It was yesterday, today, I think he's still here now, conjunct this moon. We also have the asteroid America is over here. Okay, but Rosh Shalom is conjunct this moon. Remember, that's associated with the first ever peace treaty in the Middle East, and at the time of this moon, the UN will be voting on a resolution for a mandated ceasefire that I guess they don't have to actually follow, that was prompted by Egypt. Egypt being the same one who signed this first ever peace treaty, so this energy is coming back up. The asteroid Horus is conjunct the galactic center at the time of this moon. The Horus archetype and that death, rebirth archetype is riddled throughout this. Archetypes mean many things for many people. The powers that be really do love Horus and the Egyptian pantheon. When it comes to their occult lore, Horus, Osiris, Ra, those are key archetypes in a lot of occult orders. But as you see, as we read that book, these have ancient origins that are rooted in our evolution as a collective species, right? Okay, so this asteroid here, I had no idea what this was. I was like, what the fuck does this even mean? So I looked it up. Apparently, this asteroid was discovered by this astronomer at Caltech's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in 1978, and it is named as a tribute to Pasadena. So I told you guys this before. A lot of times they name asteroids to try to sound like gods, but they're named after things. Like the Ukraine asteroid is Ukrainia. The Iran asteroid is Irani. The there's many instances. The Rockefeller asteroid is Rockefellia. And this is what there's an asteroid named Pasadena, and there's an asteroid named Caltech. But this one is a name in tribute to Pasadena, which is the origin of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which is the origin of NASA, particularly the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which was started by occultists who followed the workings of Aleister Crowley, particularly Jack Parsons. So I think that it's interesting that this asteroid is conjunct this moon, and will be conjunct the sun at the time that they launch the moon mission, which I really think is rooted in a lot of that occult symbolism, from the Artemis being the moon goddess, the falcon of of Horus, and Aleister Crowley and Jack Parsons, and Elon Hubbard were all working to manifest this sort of moon child, this progenitor of the New Age, and this incarnation of a being that will usher in the ultimate apocalypse. But I think that the moon mission falling around all of these asteroid alignments is not a coincidence. All right, the archetypes speak, right? Okay, so we talked about all this. Now, in opposition to the moon, we have these, okay? So this is a figure in Greek myths associated with the Trojan War, who she's associated with the grief of war. She killed herself after her husband died in the Trojan War. So it's associated with grief and war and destruction. This asteroid here is one of the Furies, and she is said to be the avenger of murder. She lives in the underworld, and she comes up to Earth to pursue the wicked, to partake in revenge against the wicked, particularly those that have killed and have murdered others. So, considering the UN resolution, the current world events, this connection to the grief and war and vengeance in regards to taking life, I think this is interesting. This is also the asteroid Arachne, which is associated with entanglement, or weaving. And so the archetypal dynamics are entangled with this grief of war and this energy of vengeance during this time. And then the last one is this asteroid, which I also do not know what this is. So I looked it up. It is apparently a city in South Africa. And I was like, oh, isn't Elon Musk born in South Africa? Where was Elon Musk born? Well, he was born exactly here in this exact part of South Africa. And I was like, okay, well, that's interesting, considering at the time of the occultation of Orion, of Betelgeuse, of Horus or Osiris, of the time of the occultation of that, this asteroid was in exact alignment with Betelgeuse, his hometown, his birthplace. And I really do think he is playing a lot of this part when it comes to this X, right? This God-like figure in our reality. He is really ramping up the controlled op dynamic, really coagulating them all together over there on that platform. But I think it's interesting that his hometown asteroid was conjunct the star at the time that it was occulted. This star that is so strongly associated with the X, okay? Now this area, this degree here, is not only aligned with Betelgeuse, the pole star, and right now the asteroid of his hometown, but it's also a significant part in his chart. So he was born on June 28th, 1971. This is his chart right here. And his ascendant, the start of his chart, his ascendant falls in alignment with Betelgeuse and the asteroid that is associated with his hometown at the time of that occultation. So his ascendant is here, Betelgeuse is here. His ascendant and Betelgeuse are always aligned. But at the time of the occultation, the asteroid of his hometown is also here. There are many figures that I think are playing this like death and rebirth, resurrection, God. Alex Jones, definitely one of them. Andrew Tate, definitely one of them. I called it when he got arrested that nothing would ever come of that, and he would come out more primed for the public to believe his narrative than ever before. All it will do is add fuel to the fire. Same thing with Alex Jones, same thing with Tucker Carlson, and the same thing is happening with Elon Musk. They're all controlled ops. All right, so let's see. Oh, and what is he doing right now at the time of this? He is talking with Alex Jones. He is posting shit like this. Oh, come on. I don't want to have to join. Okay. This is what he posted today. I breathe air for you. I pump blood for you. I filter waste for you. The collapse is inevitable. Buy more food and ammo. He's posting stuff about Pizzagate. He's posting all of the like mainstream conspiracy topics. He's really out there poking the bear by design. He has so many government contracts. He is nothing but a shell. But anyway, he's out there with his exes and casting his spells. All right. Oh, here's Iris. She is the goddess of rainbows. And she is also a messenger. Yeah. Okay. All right, let's go over here and we're almost done. We're just going to do the cards. All right, so let's see if there's anything else I wanted to kind of point out. We talked about that. Also the fact that this is a city in South Africa, and we have all of this stuff happening in the Middle East through an apartheid, which is something very similar went down there as well. And it seems like that archetypal narrative, that karmic wound is surfacing within our collective right now. Like, did we learn our lesson? Or are we just gonna like keep repeating shit over and over and over and over again? All right, a couple other things I want to kind of point out asteroid wise here before we go to the cards. All right, America, Ukraine, the asteroid Ops, and the asteroid Patsy are all within conjunction to each other in the early degrees of Sagittarius here. So they're all here within these early degrees of Sagittarius. America, Ukraine, the asteroid Ops, which I associate with Psyops, but it's a god of abundance and prosperity. And the asteroid Patsy, the fall guy, right? Ukraine, America, these are fall guys for the powers that wanna be. All right. The asteroid China and the asteroid Orion are conjunct each other in Pisces. Oh, Pisces over here because it's not an exact chart. So they're conjunct each other and Saturn over here in Pisces. So Iran and China are being restricted right now by the planet Saturn, the planet of restriction, limitation, the planet that like holds you back. So right now these two countries, China and Iran, are being held back by Saturn, but this won't be for too much longer. They have been inching closer to Saturn, and they both have made it over it, and now they're going to start to move away. So these are two nations we'll probably start to hear a lot more from in regards to the world stage, especially once both these asteroids get out of Pisces and into Aries. And then the asteroid Israel is still conjunct the asteroid Deception Island. It has been throughout this whole thing because there is a lot of deception going on from that. Where is this? Okay, over here at 23 degrees. So right here we have Israel conjunct the asteroid Deception Island, which is named for an island in Antarctica, but is archetypally associated with deception, right? So these are both conjunct each other, and they're actually conjunct the main star in the serpent. So Ophiuchus falls throughout much of Sagittarius, but the serpent itself moves over into tropical Scorpio, with the main star being Serpens. It's actually this one right here in the neck. The main star falling at 22 degrees of Scorpio. So the asteroid Israel and the asteroid Deception Island are conjunct this serpent right now. So the serpent that the consciousness of humanity is working to tame and integrate is the deception that is coming from the country of Israel. This is the serpent humanity is battling at this time, is the deception and the illusion that is coming from that country. It's coming from Israel. Israel is the serpent we are working to tame. We are working to integrate. We are working to reel in, right, as a collective whole. All right, we have the cards, and then we're done. I will link this. If I forget, please, somebody remind me, because sometimes I do forget to link the things. Okay, let me come over here. And let me get the cards, because I forgot to take a picture, so I have to show them to you. All right. So the archetype card that came out is the Unseen, right? This is the energy that is coming through the galactic center, that Neptune square, really the entire archetypal dynamics. And the card that was at the bottom of the deck was the Vessel. So what we're being asked to do right now is to hone our vessel for the unseen, right? And the way we do that is by aligning with our unique frequency, the essence of thyself, right? So we'll get to this card in a second. We're not going to read this one from the book, but we will read this one. Okay. The unseen, the spirit, the eternal. The unseen is just as it sounds. We cannot see it, yet it sees us, watching and waiting with wisdom both kind and instructive. We feel the presence, sense it, intuit, and then doubt its existence, though it rallies our intention time and time again. The energy of the unseen may come in many forms. A compelling dream, especially with a square to Neptune. A sudden insight, especially with a quincunx to Uranus. A clear voice, a vision, or a message from a loved one who has passed to the other side. It is natural to fear these communications, as they challenge our perception of what is real. When this card appears, your guides are near. The eternal is present. The doorway between worlds is ajar. Listen. The sounds may seem as though they come from a distant land, but they call from your innermost chambers. Oh my God. That is so good for Mercury retrograde, trine Jupiter retrograde, conjunct the galactic center. The sounds may seem as though they come from a distant land, but they call from your innermost chambers. Being graced by the unseen is a gift. Treat it kindly. Allow yourself to be seen by eternal eyes. Guidance comes in many forms. Don't expect it to be glittery or comfortable. The spirit world speaks the truth. Sometimes it soothes and sometimes it burns. When this archetype is evolved, it is clairvoyant guidance and whispers of wisdom. But in its lower archetype, it can manifest as a dark, looming energy or an unwillingness to forgive. And it says to go deeper, you can read Hamlet or about the three fates in Greek mythology, or even The Shining. Okay. Okay. So we're working on honing our vessel for the unseen, our container for the unseen to manifest. That's us. That's our chart. That's our personality, our persona, our existence, our incarnation, right? And how do we do this? Well, we do that by activating and honing our unique frequency. The card that came out is Dimension of Earth. So this is, you guys have heard me say this many times. This deck is broken up into all of the elements: earth, air, fire, water. The spiritual realm, the celestial realm, the dimensional realm, and the shadow realm. And each card is a mixture of two. So this is a push pin from when I was taking pictures of my kids' artwork. So this is Dimension of Air. So it's very multidimensional, very dimension of Earth. This is very multidimensional, very otherworldly, very plugged into the higher spheres, but then funneled into this Earth time-space continuum. Okay? So I'll read this from the book. As the energies of the dimensional expanse embody into the earth energies, the inherent novelty of each point of creation is discerned. Individuality, perspective, self-honesty, and the recognition of personal creativity. This card is the portal into life which is known to me. It is a direct recognition of the primacy of personal experience and a call to rise up as myself and play the part I am most inspired to play, the role which no other can. Individual is a mysterious word. It means a separateness conceptually, yet in its linguistic structure, it is pointing to that which is whole, that which is undivided. I hold a transparent cube before me and gaze into each of its sides, into the inner cube. As I do so, each side I look into, I am seeing a different inner cube. This is the wonder of perspective. This is the power of paradigm. This is the gift and joy of personality, which we are at the peak of. We're at the peak of our hero's journey, right? The awakening of that galactic man. Inquiry, looking directly at it, being completely honest. How do I see it? All right, so I'm sure there's something in your life right now that question triggered within you, right? Looking directly at it, whatever it may be, being completely honest, as only a Sag can do. How do I see it? All right, last one from the Spiritual as Fuck deck, 99 inspirational cards for people who fucking need some inspiration. The card that came out is Stop Trying to Skip the Fucking Struggle. And it says, keeping it positive won't insulate you from having emotions and needing to evolve. You're not going to spiritual your way out of hitting the next layer of wounds to heal. So many of us make the mistake of thinking we'll arrive and that'll be that, with the life lessons and all that shit. Personal growth is more like peeling an onion than climbing a mountain. It gets stinkier and stinkier and you cry more, but everything gets juicier the deeper you go. The true spiritual badasses don't pretend that their onions don't stink. So stop trying to skip the struggle. Mercury is going to throw some wrenches your way. Electronics, communication issues, whatnot. But that's only because a message is trying to come through. And so like the world around us needs to glitch so that we can access that internally. We can go within and we can hear the call, I guess. All right, guys, have a great new moon. It's really nicely aspected. You just have to get right with Neptune, right? But Neptune, I feel like I have like makeup I didn't blend in good here. Neptune is our psychic senses. It's our dreams. It's our inspiration. It's rooted in art and music and all avenues of creative expression. It's rooted in the Akashic field, the collective unconscious, the archetypal realm. These are all avenues that you can dive into, that you can navigate, that you need to embrace during this time. If you are if you have not honed your spiritual and psychic connectivity, like if you are just like a normie out there in the world, then yeah, Mercury retrograde is going to be confusion and delusion and illusion, and it'll be a doozy. It's still working to put you on track. It still has a bunch of harmonious aspects, but there will be a lot of fog, right? But those triggers are spiritual triggers. These are spiritual triggers that are going to force us into needed action, and will be coming from the spiritual realm, which we all vibe with, right? So don't let anybody convince you this Mercury retrograde is anything other than galactically, psychically profound. Okay? All right, I'll see you guys later. We'll meet before the Cancer moon, which is on the 28th. So we'll probably, I keep trying to get these videos done a little bit earlier, but there's just been so much going on around me. The solstice is on the 21st. I don't know. Sometime before we'll meet on the Cancer moon, and my webinar will be airing in January, where we'll be diving into all of the astrology of 2024. You'll have something that looks like this for every single month, plus, I mean, it looks better. They didn't print very well. But you'll have something that looks like this for every single month, plus the artwork. In like a little spiral type of calendar that kind of looks like this. Like this. But better, because I made it. And yeah, that should be available for purchase soon, so keep an eye out for that. And yeah, have a great new moon, you guys.